Today on Generation Gap Gaming, I'm going to show you the 10 most overrated NES games. Now don't let those nostalgia goggles blind you. Stay tuned, guys. If this is your first time here at our channel and you love talking about and playing retro games as much as we do, then consider subscribing and hitting that bell for notifications so you can know whenever we post a new video. Okay, I'm just going to give a little disclaimer here at the beginning. This is my list of the 10 most overrated games on the NES. I'm not saying these games are bad. I mean, these games are mostly in the top 25 or 50 of any best NES games list you'll find. I'm just saying I don't understand why these games were so popular, and I'm going to give my reasons why, so just hear me out before you start grabbing those torches and pitchforks. Alright, so the first game I want to talk about is Kirby's Adventure. This is actually one of the games from the last days of the NES. It was made in 1993 and the Super Nintendo had most of the attention. And this game was actually a sequel to Kirby's Dream Land on the Game Boy. Now don't get me wrong, graphically the game is beautiful for the NES and I think Kirby the character is cool, where he can inhale enemies and take on their abilities, but I've just never been able to really dive into the gameplay of any Kirby game. The game is just too easy. I just never really felt challenged, and it just felt like it was built for the very casual gamers who don't really want to work hard at beating a game. I mean, you can just inhale air and float through most of the levels if you want to. I know many people hold fond memories of it, but it just doesn't click with me. Next up is Kid Icarus. I know this was made by the same team who made Metroid, and while I love that game, Kid Icarus was always one of those games that I tried to force myself to like. I think the premise of the game is cool, where you're an angel trying to save the day and kill Medusa and whatever, but I just always found this one of the most frustrating platformers I've ever played. Something about the color scheme and the style of the game just doesn't sit right with me, and I really find the enemies bizarre and just not as engaging for whatever reason. I know I may be nitpicking, but I just don't like the looks of the game. I'm not a big fan of vertical scrolling games either, especially ones where you can't backtrack, and in this game, if you happen to fall once the screen scrolls up, then you're dead, and trust me, you're gonna miss a lot of platforms in this one. Yeah, I never made it to Medusa, and to be honest, I'm probably never gonna try. I know for a fact this next game was a huge hit for all ages and boys and girls alike. I'm talking about Tetris. I think most of its popularity came from the fact that it came packaged with the Game Boy, but it was a huge hit on the NES as well. It was one of those games that became a cultural phenomenon, and I think it just got oversaturated, and I think that always put me off playing it. I always couldn't stand the repetitive nature of the game, and you just kept going to the next level, which was the same exact level you just played, just a little bit faster. I just found it horribly mind-numbing, and it sparked many Tetris clone games like the next game I'm going to rant about. Dr. Mario. I thought this game was going to be some cool twist on the platforming games that we were used to with Mario, and it turned out to be another Tetris clone, and I was furious. People bought this game like crazy too. I had many friends that loved it. I really thought it was a cheap gimmick to attach Mario to this game when all he does is toss some colored pills for you to match up. I'm still not over this, Nintendo. I know I'm going to catch some hate for this next one, but here it goes. I think Excitebike is way overrated. I know being able to design your own track was pretty cool, but you couldn't save the track you made if you turned the game off, and I really didn't want to have to do that every time I started the game. I know I would play this game with friends, and you couldn't play two players, and that never felt right to me either. And the sound the bike makes before the engine overheats. It was just obnoxious. It's one of those games that we would never play it for more than 10 or 15 minutes before we moved on to playing Mario or Zelda. Now on to Iron Sword, Wizards and Warriors Part 2. Now I love the original Wizards and Warriors. It was great platforming, collecting gems, great sub-weapons, and fun and challenging boss battles. But they really dropped the ball with Iron Sword. For starters, Fabio is on the cartridge. I mean, come on guys, Fabio, really? And what's up with having the googly eyes on the armor this time? This game just looks so goofy and less authentic compared to the first. The enemies also respawn crazy fast in this one, and it's pretty out of control. Also, the mechanics of the sword in this game just don't respond as well as the first. Just stick to the first Wizards and Warriors and you'll be okay. The next game's title and cover art really set me up for some major disappointment when I brought it home when I was a kid. And that game is Dragon Warrior. I mean, look how cool this box looks. Now, what 10-year-old boy back then wouldn't want to play this game? This was my first experience with an RPG, which I don't think many people in North America even knew what an RPG was back then. Let's just say I realized very quickly that I'm not an RPG type gamer. With all the text you had to read and navigating through all these words to order people what to do, it felt more like a chore or educational game to me, and I was very disappointed. I really just don't like the random interruptions and all the grinding you have to do in these games, and this game's graphics were pretty basic. I know many people love this game because it really was one of the first RPGs on the NES, and those games have such a great following. No offense to RPG lovers, but they're just not for me. Now, Bubble Bobble was originally a very popular arcade game that also had a very successful port on the NES. If you're not familiar with the game, the premise is that you're a bubble-blowing dragon. Yes, you heard me correctly, a bubble-blowing dragon. And being that you are a bubble-blowing dragon, you go around shooting bubbles at enemies and then pop the bubbles with the pointy scales on your back. Once you clear the enemies, you go on to the next level. Now repeat this for 100 levels. Seriously. 100 levels. There is no way I could play this game that long, and especially since they play the same music through the entire game. I know a lot of people like the game because of the co-op play with friends, and I tried that too, but I guess I'm just one of the few people who find this game unappealing. Now I think this next game has some of the most memorable box art for the NES. I remember seeing this game behind many counters, and the box always caught your eye. I'm talking about Fester's Quest. Uncle Fester was one of the most beloved characters from the Addams family, and the thought of him having a game did sound pretty cool. I know I thought it would be a game where you were in the Addams family mansion battling some kind of supernatural forces with the rest of the family. Well, that's not what you get. You basically spend most of the game wandering around the streets and a sewer fighting, of all things, aliens. Really? Fighting aliens in an Addams family game? It just makes no sense at all. Fester just really seems out of place in these surroundings, and anytime you die, you start all the way back at the beginning of the game. I'm glad I just rented this one because I got fed up with it pretty quick. Last but certainly not least is Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. If you've ever been to our channel before, you know how much I love the Zelda franchise, and the original Zelda on the NES is my favorite game of all time. I even made a complete video walkthrough and strategy guide for the original Zelda. You can check that video up in the card here if you're interested. But the second Zelda is totally different than the first. This game removed the top-down gameplay from the first and turned it into a side-scroller with a horribly laid-out overworld and a large RPG component to the game, and you know how I feel about those. The level of difficulty ramps up too quick as well, and many gamers know how insanely hard Death Mountain is the first time you try to get through it. You have to grind so much in this game to increase all of your stats, it just becomes monotonous. The game over screen even shows Ganon, and yet you never fight him in the game. What's up with that? I have beat this game once in my life just to say that I did it, but it got to the point where it felt more like a chore than playing through an all-time classic. So what do you think? Do you agree with my list, or are you ready to come give me a beatdown for talking about some of your childhood favorites? Let me know in the comments below, and I want to make sure to invite you to click that subscribe button and hit that bell for notifications if you love gaming from all generations like we do. G3 out.